I am here this evening to talk to you about probably the most boring thing in Rotary, which is taking minutes. But as Leslie said, DG Leslie said, the heart of the club is the secretary, and the heart of the secretary is minutes. The heart of a secretary is record keeping, archiving, organizing. So if you have agreed to be the secretary of your club, and I hope you did so with joy and excitement, it is absolutely imperative that you make a commitment to do a good job, because the club relies on the secretary in so many ways to really be that individual that holds things together, but particularly information, knowing where information is, where it's stored, how to access it, how to share it. So keeping minutes, taking them, keeping them, sharing them is such an important job for a club secretary, indeed secretary of any board or any committee. And you heard that I serve on a number of different boards, and I have served as secretary on a number of boards. I am currently the secretary on a board in Trinidad for what's known as International Women's Foundation. And writing minutes, taking minutes is such an important responsibility. So what we're going to go through this evening are some basic thoughts on why we have minutes, what they're for, how to structure them. But before I start the slides, I really want to impress upon you the importance of making a commitment to minutes, because it does take a lot of time. It can feel overwhelming, especially if you're dealing with all of the other emails that are coming in, all of the different other requirements from your club. But proper record keeping is absolutely critical, particularly at the end of your year when you hand over to the next leadership team. There needs to be a smooth transition, and that can only really be done if there are proper records. So one of the things I think it's important for secretaries-elect to do as you start to plan and prepare for July 1 is to really schedule time every single week. When I was club secretary 100 years ago, I put in my diary an hour a week to do Rotary minutes. Now that was before I realized how much work Rotary really was. I was naive at the time, and Sonia and David and Leslie and other people on the district team will know that it's a lot more than an hour a week now, but this was before email. And I would schedule time to do my Rotary secretary work. And I say that because if you don't put it in your calendar and you don't plan for it, it often doesn't happen, or it doesn't happen efficiently, and then it piles up and it becomes overwhelming. So it's important to make that commitment in terms of time. Give yourself an hour, a couple of hours every week to really do the secretarial work of your club, and you will know when the best time is for you. For me, it was Saturday mornings, and I would go on the computer on Saturday morning and do what I had to do so that I was ready for the week ahead. It was difficult then to take time from my job, but find a way to stay on top of the work. It's absolutely critical because it can very quickly pile up. So with that, let me now go to my slides. So we are talking about minutes. Wait a minute. I love the title. Thank you, Liz. What I am going to go through, three things really. The first is, what are minutes? Why? And I know I'm talking to professionals. I know I'm talking to grown-ups, but it's astonishing how often we don't do good minutes. We forget to do the minutes, or we're scrambling with the minutes. So it's important to understand the purpose. Then we're going to look at a couple of different types of minutes that you can use in your club, and 7 things that you really must always include. So what are minutes? Well, in their most base form, minutes are a record, a written record of both the conversation that was held and, most importantly, decisions that were made during a meeting. I have found, for me as a secretary on the board that I mentioned, and having served as secretary many times, the focus should be on the decisions that were made rather than what everybody said. Of course, people's contributions are important, But you need to always understand that the purpose of the minutes should guide how you actually prepare your minutes. So always reflect on the purpose. Why am I doing minutes? Okay. It's not necessarily, now this is different from if you're a corporate secretary on a state board or the board of a financial institution or something like that, where very often verbatim minutes are required. That is not normally the case in a Rotary meeting. But decisions made are absolutely essential because those will inform, for example, your club bylaws or the dues that your members are going to pay. And somebody may say, well, I need to understand how that decision was made by the board. And you can refer back because you've managed and you are recording the decisions made in that way. So minutes are used for, of course, sharing information with people who could not make the meeting. As I said, keeping track of decisions, but also action items. The very best minutes are clearly defining who has to do what and by when. Minutes should not just say, Lara agreed to do a budget for the project. They should include by when. Maybe then who she's sharing it with. So the detail required in proper minutes is important because that is the checklist for members of the committee, the board, the project team, the subcommittee, whatever it might be, to go back and reflect on what they had agreed they would do. And then this guides your strategy as an organization, as a club. This guides how you plan events. This guides how, as I said, maybe you have to amend your bylaws. Of course, we are required to review our bylaws every couple of years. So you may have board decisions that will influence changes to your bylaws. So it's important to understand the purpose of minutes. It's not just, you know, Betty was there and Billy was there and Bobby had on a green shirt and Betty's hair looked nice tonight. It's really profoundly important to understand that minutes have a purpose and they guide the strategy of your club. So the way that you take the minutes, the recording that you share with your board, with your members, should reflect and honor, I think, the importance of minutes and not be scrappy and not be, you know, sort of lackadaisical. They're an important document for Rotary clubs. Yes, we're fellowship and we're fun and we're liming and we're drinking rum and we're all of those lovely things in Rotary, but we have a serious purpose. And minutes are a serious part of our purpose as clubs. As I said, minutes should include deadlines. So the president or the project leader or the committee chairman can go back to the minutes and reflect. We had agreed by the 1st of March we would do this, or by the 1st of April. And so you can measure success and celebrate it as the club hits certain milestones that the board has set, but also hold Rotarians accountable that they had agreed to do a particular thing by a particular date, and it was minuted. This also minutes do also give your club a certain level of protection. Now, we're lucky in the Caribbean, we don't get sued very often. We're not a particularly libelous culture. But, you know, it is important for the board to be able to defend decisions against other club members, for example, in a forum, to go back and be able to show we took a vote. You've elected us to lead this club. The board has a very important responsibility to guide strategy for a club. And the minutes will record how decisions are made to move the club forward. And you can defend the decisions because the way your minutes are written and stored and shared, and they are properly recorded. Of course, now, because we're doing so much on Zoom, you may even have an actual audio recording of the decision-making process. Now, there are two different types of minutes that are available. I mean, there's lots of templates that you can use, of course. I generally do use a template. I use the same template for every single meeting, and I would just change the date and update it. But for formal meetings such as board and committee meetings, it's important to use a formal layout as opposed to an informal meeting, which I will come to and discuss. So this, for example, will include the roll call. That is a list of not just who was there, but who also was not there. Your board may be 11, 12 members. It's important to note who apologized for absence, who was unable to attend, as well as who was there. Because people who don't attend multiple board meetings, obviously that's a challenge for the club. That may be something that needs to be addressed. You may even have in your bylaws that to become a director, you are required to attend a certain number of board meetings in a year. And so your roll call will be evidence of attendance or lack thereof. You must always, at the beginning of your board meeting, approve the minutes of the former board meeting. And it should record any amendments, errors, omissions, who the adoption of the minutes was moved by, and who seconded the adoption. And if you're really good, you should get the minutes of the previous board meeting amended and signed by your president and then archived as the official record of that particular board meeting. Secretary could sign as well. It depends what your bylaws say or your standard operating procedure. But once the amendments have been made, the actual final version of your board minutes, particularly the board minutes, should be signed and saved, archived in a place that can be accessed by future boards, by your current board, but those are the definitive minutes. Once you have gone through your minutes and you have dealt with matters arising from the previous minutes, then you may go into new business. And then, of course, you may adjourn the meeting. Now, I'm not talking about meeting management tonight because that's another presentation for another day, but it's important to understand that the agenda for your meeting will really be the format of your minutes. So whatever the agenda that's sent out by the secretary or agreed with the president is, that will be the flow of your minutes. So the two things should really marry together. And in fact, you may even include the agenda as an appendix. I have seen that done. So we had certain issues that we really needed to raise. They were on the agenda, and the agenda is included in the minutes as an appendix. Nothing wrong with that. You can have as many appendices as you wish in minutes. So the call to order is, of course, the chair, which would typically be your president. If he or she's absent, maybe your president-elect, calls the meeting to order. The secretary then should do the roll call, and you then list everybody that's present. With Zoom, it's easy to see everybody. We make a note of it. We, in my club, we still measure, we don't call it attendance anymore. Of course, we measure engagement. So we do actually typically, we might even do a screenshot of who was at the meeting, just for the record, so we know exactly who was there, but we definitely keep a note of everybody who was at the meeting. So the call to order may be the president. You may or may not have a prayer. You may or may not say the four-way test. There are different clubs have different protocols as regards to board and committee meetings, but at the very minimum, you must begin with the call to order and the roll call, and these are minuted. Then in your minutes, the secretary should read the minutes from the previous meeting. What typically happens now, though, is that they are emailed and members are asked to comment by email. If that's the case, then your minutes should reflect the date on which they were shared with the rest of the board, comments, errors, omissions, amendments that were received, and then the approval. So in the minutes, let's say of the 1st of March, you should record as a secretary that the minutes of the 1st of February meeting were emailed to the club on the 10th of February. No comments were received. The following member has moved that the minutes be approved, and the next member has seconded. So it's important that you're showing that sequence of activities as a secretary, that you have shared the minutes within the agreed time frame. There were no errors or there were changes, and now what we're looking at are the amended versions. So documenting that sequence of activities, I think, is essential to show the work of the secretary, but to show the club, if anybody ever asks, the process that you used. And then you go into your issues. The minutes do not need to reflect what everybody said. Lara said this, Leslie's commented, Liz disagreed, you know, Paddy said, no, that's not, I don't agree with that. You can just say a discussion ensued, the following points were raised. It's not ideal, in my opinion, to name names in minutes, although there may be certain people who require or request that their comments be attributed to them. So you need to agree with your board what's the best protocol for us. In some committees I've been on, there would just be a list of some of the comments that were shared. So the issue was discussed and the following items were raised. Do we have enough money? Have we got a corporate sponsor? Not necessarily Lara asked or David said, but that is a protocol that you can agree with your club. But at the end of that, then you summarize, was a decision made? And then what are the action items coming out of that? At the end of the open business, which is the matters arising from your previous board meeting, you then do the same thing for new business. So this is a new item that somebody wished to bring up. So we've had the crisis in Ukraine. We wish to bring to the board a discussion about whether the club wishes to make a donation to the disaster fund for Ukraine. So we have a discussion about that, and then we summarize. And then you note on the minutes the adjournment. The meeting closed at 6 p.m. Ideally, you could put the date and time of the next meeting. I'm sure, like my club, most of you have your board meetings on the same day and time each month. And then you note the minutes were submitted by, and then of course in the next iteration they'll be approved by. So the board minutes particularly have to be very formal. They don't have to be very long, but they should record properly the decisions that were made, key issues that were raised, and the action items that the board has agreed. So I have seen board minutes that are one page, get straight to the heart of the matter. There are other board minutes that are 15 pages long, and every single time anybody spoke, it's recorded. I don't think we need that in Rotary. That's my personal view. What's important is the decisions that are made by the board to guide the club and move it forward. Then you have informal minutes. And this you may wish to use, for example, maybe for a project meeting or even a club meeting. Some club secretaries do take minutes of the weekly meetings of clubs. And that may typically, maybe you do a newsletter or something like that to share with members who were not there what were some of the things that were discussed at our club meeting. And you can use a less formal structure for these. Again, you will have a list of the attendees, the date and time, but in the difference, excuse me, with this is that there's typically just one objective, one purpose. This committee met for the purpose of planning the district conference, planning the Model UN. Or maybe if it's a club meeting, today we're just going through a couple of things on the Rotary Foundation. So these can be a lot simpler because they're not necessarily reflecting strategic decisions that are made by the board. You may have 3 or 4 talking points and coming out of those some action items. I like to do minutes in table form. I love a table because I find them much easier to read than just, pages and pages of text. The use of bullet points and numbering is always very important. My recommendation to you is that you use numbers, not bullets, because then if I wish to refer to the minutes, I can say under vocational service item number 3, rather than having to say, well, it's the 5th bullet point. And of course you have numbers, Roman numerals, letters, you have all sorts of options. So the way that I do minutes is each different topic. So let's say we're dealing with the different avenues of service of the club. So I will have A, club administration, and then there'll be A1, upcoming club forum, A2, payment of dues, A3, financial reports, so whatever it might be. Item number B, international service, and then B1, B2, so that anybody reading the minutes referring to them can quickly point to a line or a topic that they wish to discuss. The other thing you must always do is number your pages. Again, you want to make it as easy as possible for your users, your readers, to go back and reflect and pick up information, pick up decisions. A great thing to do as well on formal minutes at the end and on informal is this action item summary. It's not traditionally done in formal minutes, but I think for Rotary, it's super helpful, even if it's done as an appendix, to just list in a snapshot. These are the 5 decisions that were made. This is for Lara, for Liz, for Leslie, to be done by this date. So that I, as a director or a member of that committee, can just quickly go and look and remind myself of what I had agreed to do. That's a choice you can make. You can embed them, of course, in the body of the minutes. But I do think a synopsis at the end is very helpful. Now, in your minutes, as I said, you should always include 7 things. The date and the time. The location is not necessarily essential, but it can be there. The names of the participants, and a lot of people also include the positions. So you may see Leslie, District Governor-elect, Lara, past District Governor, or whoever's there. So you may actually see the position that that person holds in the club. Again, it's a personal choice. The purpose of the meeting. It's a board meeting, it's a review of our bylaws, it's a club forum, whatever it may be. And by the way, if you're having club forums, which you should be doing, those also have to be minuted, because important decisions are made at club forums by the people in your club, the members of your club. It can just be an informal minute. It doesn't have to be formal, but those decisions must be recorded. You must have your agenda and your topics. You should always have action items, and then next meeting date, time and place, and finally any supplementary documents, which is your appendix. So maybe, for example, in my club, what happens is if a member of the board cannot attend the board meeting, like today is my club board meeting, I wasn't able to attend because I'm here with you. So I will submit in advance my report for the areas of the club that I am responsible for. And then that will be recorded as an appendix. So I wasn't at the meeting, but I submitted my update on membership or the Model UN or whatever projects I'm working on. And those are then added as an appendix. So then at the beginning of the minutes, you list the appendices, that you have included. So it's important to have this structure with your minutes and make sure that at the very least you have these 7 elements. And then, of course, once you've completed the minutes, make sure that you share them with your team and you archive them properly. Some final thoughts. I believe it is essential to send your minutes out 2 weeks before the meeting. So if you meet monthly, your meeting is on the 1st of the month, your minutes should go out by the 14th for the following, or the 15th for the following meeting. I don't think it's good practice the night before a board meeting or an hour before the board meeting that you're getting the minutes. That does happen a lot. It's not best practice. It's very difficult for board members to then have a chance to review and to comment and spot errors. As many of you may know from Facebook, I'm somebody that is obsessed with spelling, and I like to go through the minutes and look for not just spelling errors, but things that were not necessarily agreed or written or recorded in the right way, because I want to make sure that the integrity of our board is maintained. And it may just be that you didn't quite hear something, or you had a question that wasn't answered. So it's important that the board collaborates to support the secretary to get the minutes right. And you should be able to archive. You should have, of course, with the cloud, you don't need to pay. You can store minutes for every single avenue of service in your club, every committee, every project. There should be a folder in your club virtual archives with minutes of meetings and other things like budgets and press releases and all of those things. The reason being that most clubs repeat projects. So I should be able, if I'm the incoming president or the incoming fundraising chairman, to go into our club archives and look at all of the minutes from the previous year's fundraising committee and budgets and project templates. It's astonishing to me how often, even in my club, we do a project every single year, and yet every single year it's like we've never done it before. Where's the budget? How much? Who do we speak to about? Who's our supplier for this? And that's why we archive. And that's not the secretary's job alone, of course. but the secretary should be somebody who is guiding, encouraging other club leaders to archive, to send minutes to him, to put in the archive, to follow up with club chairman. Can I have the minutes of your last meeting? I want to make sure we archive them properly. They can be very simple, but it's really important that those records are kept, particularly for handing over to your next leadership team. The way that I do minutes is I am very blessed to have a laptop, and I actually type minutes during the meeting. I'm a pretty fast typer, so I find it really helps me to, even if there's spelling errors and things, to have a sort of a bare bones minutes typed up, rather than doing handwritten minutes, which I then have to transcribe, or watching or listening to a recording that I then have to transcribe. But that's my choice. You must find a way that works for you. But what I recommend is that as soon as you can, while the decisions are fresh and the conversations are fresh, that you do type up the minutes. Make sure that there's clarity around decisions, actions, etc. You can bold them, you can highlight them, put them in a different color, whatever works for your club to really accentuate the key decisions that were made by the board in that meeting. And it's also important to use the same tense to make sure that the minutes are grammatically correct. Of course, do your spell checking so that you really do present to your board a professional set of minutes with maybe minimal changes that need to be made. So take pride in your minutes. Do them well. This is a representation of your club, your board, the strategy, the decisions that are made. So it's an important document. And so when you're doing minutes, you really do need to give yourself time to do them properly. Make sure that they are professionally written. Make sure that they are thorough and as detailed as you need them to be to move your club forward. I don't believe in including personal observations in minutes. You want to focus on the facts, not the people. So you should not find in board minutes something like Lara was furious and exclaimed angrily that she didn't agree with the budget, no way, no how. That is not appropriate for minutes. Minutes must focus on decisions made, action items, questions and queries, of course, can be minuted, but it shouldn't be a reflection of anything personal. And in fact, even as club leaders, your presidents, I know you've been taught about using the parking lot when you're managing meetings and keeping the personal out of these conversations and focusing on the work, the good work of your club. Try and keep them as short as possible. And as I said, if you do need to refer, maybe there's a planning document, or DG Leslie talked about your planning guide, or maybe you've got your strategic plan, so you wish to refer to that in the minutes, you can include it as an appendix, or if it's in the cloud, you can include a link. So the president referred to our strategic plan for 2022 to 2025, and there's the link in the minutes to go and have a look at it in the cloud if you need to. You know, we have the tools now. We don't have to print 40-page documents anymore. We have the tools to really make our minutes wonderful and engaging and interesting, but proper and professional. That's it. I hope that I've answered some of your questions. I hope that I've inspired you to do really amazing minutes. They are an important tool for clubs, and I'm very happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.